Good evening, YouTube. So, this might be take 20. I've been doing some sound experimentation with my mic tonight, trying to figure out the echo phenomenon, and I believe I figured it out. That was mic auxiliary 3 bleeding through and possibly sharing the sound channel. So tonight I want to share a smaller sculpture that I did in the early days of experimenting with casting directly pewter onto organic materials. In this piece's case, it was a vertebra, and then seashells and quartz crystal, amethyst, etc. And a longer description of this piece is on my sculpture channel, which is going to be in the description, a link there. Per my usual, it's late here. A lot of things are going on in the world, and when I get home, I tend to catch up on things that interest me, namely the situation with Gaza, Lebanon, Iran. I've been following the Gaza situation since October 8th, 2023, and written extensively on it. I have a Substack, which is also called Paradox House. It's something, the Gaza plight is something very close to my heart. Inexplicable in many ways. It's really changed my life, and I got some additional hardcore news today around Gaza and some videos and footage. So it took me a little while tonight to pull things together and keep going forwards with my routine of investing in this channel and sharing outwardly. I feel like ultimately I'm somewhat stoic by nature, but the American attitude statistically around the Middle East, around anything that their tax-paying monies support unbeknown to them, just not knowing and not wanting to know, has in some ways hyper evolved my stoicism, and sort of corralled it, not necessarily isolated it in a negative way, but definitely feel like I'm in a different headspace than the status quo. When I go out and about, I think knowledge changes you, and that's why it's so powerful. And fascist regimes, it's no coincidence that they burn books, because something intuitive in the ego understands that knowledge is power. And education is the anecdote, uh, or I should say, antidote to a lot of pain and identity around um, emotional angst. And I feel like, for whatever reason, people are often on a timeline of needing to experience that emotional angst versus understanding it and going beyond it. But I'll get into that a little bit after I present the sculpture. So this is Pluto's Cherub. This piece is about 6.5 inches tall, 4 inches at the widest points, side to side, and about 5.5 inches deep. And it's 2 castings. I said in the previous video on my art YouTube channel that I cast the head separate, but now that I think about it, well, I'm looking at the neck right now, and I'm thinking I did cast it separate. I'm thinking that it could have been that I cast it onto the piece, but I'm pretty certain that I fused it later. Almost changed my mind there, but the sculpture reminded me. So this piece, there, as I mentioned, there's a longer discussion around it on the other channel. The vertebra I found on Agate Beach up in Northern California near Arcadia. Although I'm not sure if Agate Beach is the exact name of the place, but definitely on the coast of Arcadia, along that area. So that vertebra is some kind of marine mammal. I have no clue what. That's the same day when I found the big vertebra. It's like almost 3 times the size of this one. That became a base for Eleanor's pendant, the Cyclopean nanny to Cyclopean orphans, which is also on this channel and the other channel, the pendant. This has quartz crystal, seashells, some turquoise, amethyst. I believe there's some milky quartz at the very top of the head. And I went back in after I cast the head with a small pen torch, propane, and a little digging tool that I made. And I excavated a lot of the objects that got skimmed over with the casting. When I cast it, a lot of the surface looked like the forehead looks in this piece. I didn't touch the face. And I didn't put that seashell in the eye socket. That just landed there in the molten slurry as things were solidifying and moving around. But from the edges of the face, like the silhouette of the face, all the way back, that those parts I excavated to bring out what I knew was there that had gotten covered up. So this is Pluto's Cherub. And the piece is available direct from the studio. one of a kind casting, never to be repeated again, for sure. These pieces that involve the molten pewter moving around and objects moving around with it, and then things freezing in place, is simply not repeatable. So there's a guaranteed originality through just the process itself. And it has been hermetically sealed, and I decided to seal the bone as well, just for the sake of uniformity. So per my usual, I'm going to go back up to the large screen and then get up and turn the turntable off and the camera, and I'll be right back with you. I'm going to wait for the cherub to come back around. This piece really launched the skulls, and I'll get into those soon enough. You'll see I did a long series of skulls with a similar idea of embedding objects and material. Okay, I'll be right back. So tonight I want to share some things. I got into a little bit of it at the beginning of this video, and I want to shout out to Owen Jones. I know you don't know me, but I've been watching your coverage of Gaza for many years, and it's hard to believe that it's been 3 years and it's still going on. The ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. And that there are hundreds of thousands of refugees in other countries that carry around unresolved sorrow and angst and depression and memories that simply will not perish because there's unfinished business. And I think unfinished business does not resolve itself in death. I think bills that are prerequisite for a person's peace or their sense of justice, especially right and wrong, are in many regards not negotiable. Of course, people are going to argue and say, well, it's a nuanced situation, but in the case of apartheid Israel, it's not a nuanced situation. It never was. And it's not complex either. People make it complex because they're hiding things. And the more the complex ego, the more complex the issue. But the ego makes it complex because it's hiding behind the issue. Its complexity is hiding behind a complex issue. So if you peek around the issue and you see the individual making it complex, then you get it. You understand, oh, I see why it's so complex, because you're having to tell two stories, one hiding yourself and your true intentions, and the other an ahistorical account of exactly what didn't happen because of this or that. So you actually have three stories. The one where the individual is hiding behind a story, and then the story they're hiding behind, and then the actual story. And the actual story doesn't require any ego to figure out. All it requires is an open mind, time, and fact checking, and learning some of the nuances of journalism, just in the sense of keeping your own opinion to yourself and following the facts, developing a paper trail. And scholars have been doing this for decades around Palestine, UN representatives as well, human rights organizations, Palestinians themselves, and even Jewish scholars who are pro-Palestinian have been doing it for decades. Remember, Israel is only like 77 years old, so there are people who are still alive who assisted in the massacres, the early massacres of Palestinians, in order to establish a Jewish, quote, nation state. But in building this nation state, it seems like two very different ideologies it's such a dissonant situation, par excellence. It's the epitome of cognitive dissonance, where you have a need, but it's being fulfilled by sacrificing the needs of others. And I was thinking this morning that if anyone ever asks you, what is the ego? That there are many answers to this question. But I think the simplest way to define the ego is that it's anything that a person does to ultimately reward themselves at the expense of another. So this goes for comparing oneself to another, competition, in a sense. There may be healthy competition, but it's on the razor's edge, proving, striving to defeat another in order to feel, to sort of compensate for something. So we go back to the establishment of Israel and the dissonance there. You have an emotional need, let's say, after World War II, for a home. But mixed in with that was a lot of anti-Semitism in Europe. And the British and the Zionists were working on this project starting in like 1910, 1915, 1920, way before World War II. 1948, things were going on in Palestine before 1948. Incursions, recon missions, testing the waters to see whether Palestinians would sell their land and how hard it was going to be. And so it wasn't just that a bunch of small boats with militia showed up in 1948 and started ethnically cleansing. It was done in stages. 1948 was the onslaught, was the when all these smaller experiments and events came together as the event. So the dissonance has created a cult and many coping mechanisms, all the way down to even the production of the Desert Eagle. Israel is a huge producer of military hardware, and they export that around the world, and also spyware, Pegasus, etc. And it's not a coincidence. This is all stemming from unresolved trauma and issues, let's say, to make it simple, that a certain version, like every culture, has baggage. And that baggage, if it's not dealt with, it produces things like off-gassing. So what a culture produces is often a golden thread to its skeleton closet. Like one of the big industries in America, and of course the slogan in America is the American dream. And it's not a coincidence that America is a huge dream producer. And I don't mean this as in people's dreams coming true. I mean this in the sense of Hollywood and Amazon Studios and Netflix and Disney World. Film dreams. And these dreams, these films are often projections of wish fulfillment, but it's transient. It's not real. Like affirmations, let's say, or incantations or prayers. That's one way of looking at it. And the Israel situation, you have this sense of right or privilege, but it's privileged trauma. which is sort of an odd couple, but there it is. The right to create massive suffering constantly. People, thousands of people languishing in detention, tortured, starved, suffering, in order to skirt Israel's, well, basically to skirt any denying Israel's daydream. The risk of waking up from this daydream doesn't feel good. It makes them feel uncomfortable because reality is just a pinprick away. So everything has to be precisely monitored, spyware, protected from incursions, military hardware. And this sense of being the victim needs to be constantly fed to the rest of the world, propaganda. And this is a cycle. It's a self-maintenance cycle fed by the suffering and naivete of others. And I'm not even going to get into the relationship that evangelical Christians in the United States has with Israel. That's another cognitive dissonant situation, because evangelical Christians are anti-Semitic, and yet they're the biggest donor to Israel. And if you want to know why and what that's all about, you can dig into that a little bit and look at their belief around what's going to happen in the final days, the final judgment, so to speak. So this whole thing is slowly collapsing in on itself. And Israel's going to do all it can to save face, which is a dangerous, very dangerous situation, because there's a lot of not only Israeli investment, but world investment. And there are a lot of people who are still in serious cope around the truth of the matter, because they have millions, if not billions, of dollars invested there in real estate, corporate headquarters, possibly even a dual citizenship. And yet Israel is not too big to fail. The moral question is being answered daily by their own actions against the Lebanese, even, and Iran. And I think that October 7th and what happened in the disproportionate response of Israel to that event, and then the ongoing disproportionate response, it just kept going on and on and on. It's still going as of today. They're still bombing Gaza, still blowing up buildings, incursions, ethnic cleansing, kidnapping, assassinations. So, and they have their Gaza campaign extended into Lebanon, but they're not having an easy time of it. um, because Hezbollah is not Hamas. Not that they were having an easy time with Hamas either, but Hezbollah is a completely different sentient being. You've got a jellyfish, and then you've got a man of war. Two transparent beings floating in the ocean. One is enough to bring you to attention. The other one will bring you to attention and then other places as well, if you know what I mean. So to be involved in this just as a private citizen, doing their part however they feel is appropriate, and so that when you speak your mind and you feel it as you're speaking it, you can lay down at night and live with yourself ultimately and know that, okay, I did what I felt I needed to do. And so I went from writing a lot and posting on social media to producing videos on YouTube. And I do both, but I would say 75% of my time now is into videos and speaking on camera. And I try to minimize the complaints because it seems sacrilegious, even on just an existential level, to complain when there are fathers and mothers collecting their children from the rubble. And vice versa. The condemnation is not enough. There's something deeper than condemnation. Condemnation is obvious and definitely an emotion that needs to be expressed. It's normal, let's say. And it goes beyond, at least for me, and I think for most people, it does go beyond. Well, let's say maybe not most people, but enough people where there are, and I truly believe this, and of course that doesn't really matter. I'm just saying that I'm not hypothesizing or daydreaming here. I'm sharing something that's part of my core experience, and it's not just a belief, it's something I feel. But you would call it a belief because if you don't feel it, then you figure, well, no, that's just a belief. So here it is, that there are emotions that have no words, that have no way to express themselves, but they're there nonetheless. And they're operating. they're doing things. But we, because we're in a human mainframe, we don't have the equipment to really read its pulse and really get a sense of what that's about. And yet we can intuit it. We can feel it happening, but we can't read it. It's like a Rosetta Stone that only has one paragraph in one language. And there's no translation for it. And for most people, they would call it condemnation. But I think condemnation is just the beginning. It's like the doorknob. And you turn the doorknob, and as soon as those mechanizations start to happen in order to release the latch, then it's something else. The door is still closed. You haven't pushed it open yet. Okay, so the mechanizations have started to move. The latch is free. Then you start to push the door open. The hinges respond. Now it's something else. You release the doorknob, the hinges are moving, and the door swings open. Now you have a view. Now it's something else. You haven't even stepped into the room yet. The threshold is another something else. The door responding, allowing itself to be open, is another something else. So the condemnation is just the doorknob. There is something deeper and more vast around witnessing the injustice, the long history of covering it up, and what that covering up has manifested in coping mechanisms and marketing an image. Everything hangs by a thread of propaganda in Israel. Its self-image is everything. Israel has no real natural resources to fall back on. It ultimately sells victimhood. And my question is to humanity, we're all in a lineage of death and destruction and life and birth. Our ancestors, our genetics, our inheritances, just as being human beings. Who and why would anyone market their victimhood? The indigenous of Hawaii, the indigenous of Canada, the indigenous of Australia, the indigenous of America. Are they marketing their victimhood? So one has to wonder, what's going on there? Not that mass ethnic cleansing numbers are a competition of any kind, but let's just be real for a moment. The indigenous of the Americas were multitudes of a greater loss across the board, and also South America. Climate scientists have theorized that when the colonizers came to Turtle Island, North America, and South America, that there were so many people killed during those conquests in such a short amount of time that it actually changed the temperature of the planet. I mean, we're talking about 0.3 of a degree or something micro, but it actually changed the temperature of the planet in some readable way, which even on a quantum level makes sense because, of course, the body produces heat. And when you have 100 million people suddenly disappear, then yeah, it's going to make some kind of micro adjustment somewhere. So just do your homework. Think about these things. Why would someone need to market their victimhood like that and use it as leverage, weaponize it? Aren't you enough? Aren't your holy books enough? What is not enough that you need more? What is a piece of land? It's not worth a human life. Not a single human life in my eyes. And yet tens of thousands have perished for it. And to me, forget Baal and all this digging up of old ancestral mythos and idolatry. The real idolatry is self-importance, privilege. The real idolatry is weaponizing trauma. Trauma becomes the idol. Israel is, as a geographical holy land, let's say, is also idolatry. Things that we hold more important than human life is not important at all. I mean, think about it. The thing that holds it more important than human life is human life. That makes no sense. Because it's only human life that gives it importance. Otherwise, it becomes grist for the mill, earthquake, time, it just gets covered up with sand and plant growth and vegetation and compost, and eventually it's forgotten. That's what it is. It's material, like we are. So yeah, it's it's a lot. So I'm going to say good night to you. Um, Thank you for supporting the channel, and please like and subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment, and I wish you a good weekend ahead. It's now Friday, May 8th, 2026. All the best to you. Good morning and good night.